All right. Hello, Carlos. Thank you for joining again. All right. Let's see what we've got going on here. Okay. So things checked out on my phone, so it looks like we are live. So let's get the party started, so to speak. This is already going better than my attempt yesterday. All right, so today I've got a few things planned. Welcome everybody. I'm doing this today because I botched things yesterday. So I do have a little bit of an agenda. I wanted to start off briefly talking about my background with technology. Carlos, I know you've heard this before, or parts of it, but just for the sake of having it out there on YouTube going forward for anybody that might be interested in my journey through technology, I thought I'd just talk for a few minutes about that. Maybe give a few more people a chance to join the live stream. So, I had a pretty early exposure to technology. I suppose I should put something up on the screen. Move that over here. There we go. So you can see Proxmox right now. So I started pretty early with computers. When I was in elementary school, and this was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So about 82, 83, the first computer I got to put my hands on at my elementary school was a TRS-80 Model 3 with 48 kilobytes of RAM, and the biggest memory I have of that is being able to stay inside during the cold winter months and play Oregon Trail, which on the TRS-80 version was all ASCII. But we had the option to stay inside during recess to play Oregon Trail instead of going outside in the cold. Then in 1986, I was taking a very light introduction to programming in BASIC, and at that point we were using TRS-80 Color Computer 2s with 64K of RAM. The first computer I bought with my own money was a Tandy Coco 3 that was 128K base, and later upgraded that to half a meg. Moved on to the Amiga 500 in the early 1990s, then to the Amiga 1200, and then around 97-ish, I began to acquire some secondhand PC hardware, which it was either high spec 486 processors like a DX4 120, or it was getting into some of the early Pentium processors. Also around this time, a friend of mine was selling his Amiga 4000 Tower, which for people familiar with Amiga computers, Commodore Amiga computers, they will know that this was the last of the big box Amigas to be sold. And this was actually post-Commodore. This was Amiga Technologies that had picked up after Commodore went belly up. So I've got that, and that's in storage currently. I really need to get that out, play with it a little bit more. Today I'm using a smattering of Linux boxing, Macs, and I've got one Windows machine in my current arsenal. Yeah, that's a little background on my exposure to computers. As far as my education, I've got a bachelor's in information technology with a concentration on networking, and a master's in information technology again, with a concentration on information assurance and security. So, I've got a pretty varied exposure to different things. And you know, it's fun. Technology in all its different aspects is fun. I don't get the joy out of programming today that I did when I was 12, or even when I was 16. But I do dabble a little bit in Python, and I more focus. I'm really trying to keep my motivation up to learn Ansible for IT automation. So that's kind of where my current interest is moving sort of in that direction. And some of the things we're going to talk about today focus around Proxmox, virtualization in general, you know, more Linuxy stuff. We're going to run through an install of Ubuntu 20.04 Deepin Desktop Edition, which is a brand new respin with the 20.04 release, and we're going to install that on real hardware. I have a Dell Optiplex 790 sitting next to me, hooked up to my capture box, and so we're going to boot that from a USB stick and go through the install on that. So keep in mind, while I'm going through demos today, I will be attempting to jump back and forth between different scenes so that there's something up on your screen at all time. Don't necessarily need to look at me, but having some video up on the screen is a good thing. And I am very much open to questions in the chat. Keep in mind, you know, I've got super chat enabled and the sticker function. So if you know, we get a group of people in here and you want to increase your chances of me seeing and being able to answer your question promptly, you do have the option to donate a few dollars to the channel, and my goal with any donations for this, and really any revenue I'm generating from the channel, is to continue to improve the lighting and overall video and audio quality of the videos I record and the live streams as well. So I know this is kind of a trying time for a lot of people, and everybody has their side hustle. YouTube happens to be my side hustle, and I'm just trying to not spend a lot out of my other income on the YouTube channel right now and equipment and things, while there is so much uncertainty in the world. So, with that being said, let me see, where did I relocate the chat window? The chat may have a delay to compensate for my slow upload speed. I've got a 1 minute delay on the video coming from my end. I'm not entirely sure if that impacts the chat function. That's something I'll have to actually investigate a little bit more when I'm not live. But that's probably what is causing the delay, if I had to guess. Let's see. I see your first computer ran a Core i3 2nd Gen 32-bit, 2 gigs of RAM, and 128 gig hard drive with Windows XP. Yeah, that's a lot more advanced than where I started. My first computer that I owned was, like I said, the Tandy Coco 3, and it was instant on. You ended up at a screen that was, similar to MS-DOS, but had other things built in. So you had a basic ROM to let you turn it on and start programming right away. Very primitive in comparison to a Windows XP system. So, okay, it looks like things are going well on my end. I'm going to jump and look at one other thing here real quick. And looks like we've got 5 concurrent viewers. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to say hello in the chat. I'm hoping this is going a little bit better than my failed attempt yesterday. So we're going to switch over and get back to my control screen here. We're going to switch over to my capture box and start this Ubuntu install. Let me get the couple of things ready here. Let's see, this one needs to get plugged in there. Okay, so this is a Dell Optiplex 790, and I'm going to go ahead and power this bad boy on and hit F12, and we're going to get our boot menu. There we go. All right. So we're going to select the USB storage device option. And under Linux distributions, we're going to come down to the bottom option, Ubuntu DDE, and we'll select that. And we're going to start Ubuntu DDE. And it looks like it's stuck in a loop. Alright, well, see, the bad thing about live demos is that something always goes wrong. Alright, Robo Nuggy is in the chat. Welcome, my friend. So we've got Carlos in Nicaragua, and we've got Robo Nuggy in the UK. This is getting interesting. I've always heard of the Dragon 32. I've never actually seen one here in the States. But yeah, I've been made aware of that over the years, and through my various reading on the Coco, and yeah, that's all right, Carlos. We've all got to start somewhere. You know, you may at some point get interested in retro computing, and the great thing about the technology we have today is that you don't even have to buy the actual hardware. You can get something like the Mister, which is an FPGA board, and you can run not only old computers but old video game systems, as well as old arcade games from the, I believe, the 70s up through the 90s will run on that particular board with different add-ons. So, all right. So apparently this isn't going to go so well with the Ubuntu DDE. So let's go a little bit different route. So we're going to try this again, and maybe we'll just use a regular Ubuntu install and run through this just for the sake of argument. Once I get this kicked off, I'll jump back over to the chat. Alright, Linux distributions, and we're going to we'll do desktop, and we're going to go do install Ubuntu and let that kick off, and then I'm going to jump over to the chat, and you get to see my ugly mug these days. Alright, so let me see. Welcome, Christopher. First computer was the TI-99 4A. Oh, that's cool. Interesting that you bring that up. My uncle bought TI-99 4A. I think they were on closeout at the time. And I think he got a defective model. That was the silver and black model, I believe. And then years later, he acquired one of the sort of beige models. It was still a TI-99 4A, but it was a beige model. And I don't know if that was a later product run of that particular machine. But he also had like and I've actually got it sitting in storage at my dad's place, but he had a expansion box for it. And I think he'd got this secondhand somewhere, but he had an expansion box that had a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive and internal expansion slots that you could do different things with. So I at some point want to grab those machines, and I've got a person here local to me that is really big into electronics and soldering and has more skills than I do in that arena, and would be able to help me do any recapping that might need to be done and just basic troubleshooting just to get these things up and running, because it would be great to see some of this work again. So maybe between the two TI machines that I inherited from my uncle, I might be able to make one of them work. So that's a project for another day, I would have to say. Alright, so let's switch back over to the Ubuntu install. Move the chat window out of the way. And we've got our standard install process here. We want to continue in English. Sadly, as an American, I only speak one language, and I never really had much luck picking up German that I attempted in high school. And the only Spanish I know is bad references out of movies like The Goonies. Maybe some of you have seen The Goonies, where Mouse tells Rosalita how to separate the drugs and all that fun stuff. And then there was a album by the industrial thrash metal band Ministry that had a sort of Spanish name to it. Not even sure if it's good Spanish, but I won't repeat it here because I don't want to get demonetized for this video. Okay, we're going to go with a standard installation, and we're going to install our third-party things as we go through. Let that rip for a little while. Okay, we're going to erase the existing install on there because there's nothing actually on it. And we're just going to overwrite the whole thing. And continue. The installer really hasn't changed from 1804. Maybe a few slight tweaks. And get our password and username in there, and then we get to sit and wait. So I'm going to go back to the cam screen, or the cam in the chat. Oh, I've this morning, and the cool thing about this is that it allows you to do multiple Linux distributions or just ISO images on a USB, and it actually runs on Linux. I'm not sure if it'll run on BSD. I guess we could check downloads and find that. I always like stuff that's cross-platform. Source code's available. That might not be too difficult to get it going, because the Linux version is just a shell script. So, but the piece that interests me the most on this is that it will do the same thing as Yumi, which Yumi is Windows only. So some of you may have seen Yumi before, over on pendrivelinux.com. And it's got a nice little graphical interface for building your thumb drive, and it even has quick download links if you haven't downloaded the ISOs already, and it handles putting all that stuff on a flash drive. Couple of bad things about Yumi. One, it's Windows only. Two, it doesn't really play nice in my experience with Windows 10 ISO images, which unfortunately I have to have available on some of my boot drives for my day job. And yeah, those are the two major downfalls as far as I'm concerned with Yumi. The biggest one, yeah, I see I've gone up to 6.5% drop frames. I'm still tweaking this. My upload speed is not very good. And so hopefully it'll recover a little bit. Just curious what they're saying over on the YouTube side. Not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Okay, well, my apologies for that. Unfortunately, right now there's a lot of people using YouTube and different things. Funny enough, when I went live at 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, didn't really have too many problems. But yeah, we'll keep going with this for a little while and see if things get any better. If they don't correct themselves, then I might cut this short a little bit. So I'm not entirely sure why it wouldn't be sending enough video all of a sudden. So but hopefully the playback after the stream is over will look a little bit better than what you folks are experiencing right now. I had high hopes for this, but maybe my solution is going to be going live when people are asleep. Alright. Well, let's see. The upload speed from my phone isn't going to be any better. Unfortunately, that would probably be worse. Alright, so let's see where we're at with the Ubuntu install, and that is still copying files. So if any of you guys in the chat have suggestions for setting tweaks, I am very much open to any help you're willing to lend. I'm trying to do these live streams a little bit more often, but one of the things that's really kept me from doing them up to this point has been the slow upload speed on my internet connection. So I'm hoping possibly to get that speed increased here in the short term, and that should help my cause. Otherwise, I might just go back to recording videos, or perhaps turning to using something like Jitsi Meet or Zoom or something along that lines to make things work a little bit better. So, not sure if OBS will let me make any tweaks while the stream is running, but let me look at one or two things here. Let's see. Well, that may help. And we'll give that a try, see if the stream corrects itself at all. Carlos, for this install, I just chose ext4. I have played with ZFS installs with Ubuntu, but I'm not 100% sold quite yet. I want to let it develop just a little bit longer and make sure things are really solid. I haven't broke it yet, but some of the things I do, I have experienced some file system issues before, so I've used ext4 for long enough. I know the tricks for correcting a lot of those issues when they happen. ZFS is still sort of a new beast to me, and actually I've learned quite a bit about ZFS and the implementation on BSD from watching RoboNuggy. So if you haven't checked out his channel, I'm not opposed to giving a shameless plug for a channel I'm a fan of. So if you haven't been over there, check it out. Well worth the time, and it's got me playing a little bit with BSD again. One of these days, I will dig out and I will make scans of some BSD literature that I received from various vendors back in the 1990s. And that might be kind of interesting to talk about. As the stream got any better, I made a couple of tweaks in OBS, and it looks like the drop frame rate is down to 5.1% from 6.5%. So alright, looks like we're getting close on our Ubuntu install. And let's check just to see, just for the fun of it, how many people. We've got 4 concurrent viewers, 18 playbacks. Well, that's not awful for the for a live stream that didn't have a huge promotion time before I started it. Excuse me. All right. And yes, I do agree. If you really want to check out ZFS, I probably should attempt to correct myself a little bit, or ZFS. I still can't get used to saying that on a regular basis. I'm sorry. But yes, check it out on FreeBSD and really see what it's capable of. Alright, so we have reached the end of the Ubuntu install. Go ahead and restart that. And once the logo pops up, I'll pull the... Okay, so it turned itself off. No harm, no foul. Hit the power button and get things going again and get into this new install. Hopefully. Well, sometimes these second-hand Dell machines can be a little bit finicky. I should probably just drop that extra SSD into this and really make it fly. So I'm actually in the process of working through some of these extra machines I've got my hands on recently, and I'm going to find one of them that has an HDMI port, and I'm actually going to put FreeBSD on it so that I've got a dedicated machine to play with that on, and dive into that ecosystem just a little bit more than I have in the past. But yeah, this is just me having fun with technology, and it's always fun to learn something different. And I'm a Unix lover at heart in any of the iterations and derivatives of. When I had my Coco, I actually ran a system called OS9, which was actually an 8-bit multi-user, multitasking system that, starting on 64K of RAM, you could have terminals hooked to it. And it was very similar in a lot of ways to Unix. Obviously scaled down for microcomputers, and it would be considered, by today's standards, it would be considered for embedded systems. But that was fun to play with, if not a little bit above my head at the time that I had it. But I was 13 or 14, and the documentation was not anywhere near as good as what we've got today for BSD or Linux by any stretch of the imagination. All right. Get logged in. And other than some theming and tweaks on the colors and a few things like that, a lot of this is the same as previous versions of Ubuntu. Of course, they've updated the kernel to something more recent than their prior LTS version, but it's very much a progression from those previous versions. If I can get the mouse to cooperate. Alright, let's try this. That's better. So, I guess worth mentioning, if any of you are LibreOffice users, the first alpha version of LibreOffice 7.0 is out, and they are starting a first stab at bug fixing on Monday, so 2 days from now. So let me see. Let's see. Electric bill has increased strangely lately. Yeah, a bit. OS 9. Always wanted to use that. Couldn't afford the floppy drives and the extra memory. Yep. So it was fun to play with, and my understanding is that they there was a group of developers that once the 6309 processor came out, the Hitachi 6309, and people figured out, we could shoehorn this into a Coco. They rewrote parts of OS 9 to take advantage of the 6309, and they released a new version of that. It was under a slightly different name, and that name escapes me right at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, that was I did have a floppy drive. Unfortunately, it was in storage at my dad's house, and his basement was flooded. And even though I had the disk drive in a Rubbermaid tote, when things were moved around, there were actually 2 nights of flooding. So it survived the first night, and then the second night, after things had been moved around, things were stacked differently, and the tote that had the Coco floppy drive in it was in a tote that was lighter than the one that was on top of it, and enough water got in the basement that they flipped over on their side, and so I lost the floppy drive as well as my final year's worth of Rainbow magazines. That was sort of the newspaper type edition, and all of that stuff ended up in a dumpster, unfortunately. I do still have the controller for the floppy drive. I just don't have the physical floppy drive. So one day I will hopefully acquire another one, or I will do either the Matchbox Coco or the Mister project, and run it all off from modern hardware with HDMI out and access to SD cards for storage, which takes up a lot less space, uses less power, and is a little more future-proofed. But we will see how that goes. I'm thinking about a lot of projects now that I've got all this extra time on my hands, and it's just getting access to some of the computers I've got in storage at my dad's house and getting them brought to where I'm at. So, all right. So the Ubuntu hasn't really changed all that much. This machine has 4 gigs of RAM. It's nothing real special. I got this machine for a song and dance on eBay. My daily driver OS for most things I'm doing is Mac OS. I spent a number of years on various Linux versions. I made it through my undergrad and grad school, well, part of grad school, running Linux. And then the machine I started using in grad school was a Dell XPS laptop, and I plugged it in one night before I went to bed, and the following morning it just wouldn't turn on anymore. And so that year I decided, okay, I'm just going to buy myself a MacBook Pro, and I didn't have to deal with Windows, but I maxed out the RAM, and I was able to run Linux VMs on it. In the odd occasion that I had to run Windows, I could spin up a VM. And so by and large, my Macs have been my daily driver machines for most things for the last 10 or so years. I'm not really liking the direction Apple is going right now with some of the things they're doing. And with some uncertainty around whether they're going to be switching over to ARM processors for the Mac, I'm looking at other options, and I'm very impressed with what System 76 is doing with Pop! OS and building their own machines for Linux. And so I may consider going down that road for my next mobile machine. The biggest thing that I'm waiting for right now before purchasing another laptop is I want to be able to load it up with at least 32 gigs of RAM, because right now I'm at 16 on my 2014 MacBook Pro. It was the model before they moved to the garbage butterfly keyboard that didn't work and got a lot of complaints. But if I could find a laptop that feels as solid as a MacBook Pro, but was running Linux or BSD or something that's not Windows, I would feel pretty good about jumping ship. Because everything I run on Mac OS is pretty much open source to begin with the exception of one or two things, and one of the main things is I've got some webcam software that lets me tweak the settings for my Logitech C920 and play with exposure and different things like that. But I think there's a counterpart on Linux that will allow you to do basically the same thing. Carlos, yes, I did see that Lenovo is going to start selling laptops with Fedora. I know Dell is selling an XPS Developer Edition laptop with Ubuntu pre-installed. So that's... I've kind of kept an eye on that over the last few years that's been available. I know they've gone through various iterations of that laptop, but they've kept that developer edition with Ubuntu going. So, and from what I've seen, Lenovo are some of the most solid PC laptops that you can get. All right, RoboNuggy, thank you for joining. I don't know if you caught it. I did plug your channel earlier. So thank you for the support. I hope to see you again in a future live stream. Have a good one. So, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. It's probably going to be at least 2021 before I buy another laptop. Just because, or at least another new laptop, just because with COVID-19, I'm sure you've seen prices go up on everything electronics. I've had a few people that I know that want to get into doing YouTube, but they don't have a webcam currently. And my Logitech C920 that I think I paid less than $80 for, they're going for closer to $200 right now because everybody's playing on that supply and demand economics 101 thing. So let me check here. I just want to see how we're doing on the back end. Yeah, it's YouTube's complaining again, but it's not as bad as it was before. So, let's see. I've got 143, so we've been live about an hour. So, anyways, the Ubuntu hasn't changed that much in this new version, other than under the hood. They're pushing snaps a lot more, which I admittedly have sort of a love-hate relationship with right now in their current iteration. The Snap store is slow, and I don't think it was quite ready for prime time when they included it with this release of Ubuntu. Of course, I'm an old school guy, or well, I guess you could say I'm just old, but I'm an old school guy. Installing updates and installing software is something that I still do from the command line. And even on my, well, I can actually bring this up. Even on my Windows machine, I'll switch the screen here momentarily. And let me quarantine that. So on my Windows machine, I make use of Chocolatey. And I guess we talked about this in the live stream before, but Chocolatey allows the use of a package manager on Windows, and it's really cool for keeping things updated on that system. So let me jump here, and let's see. What else? Oh yes. Inkscape is at version 1.0 now. I think I talked about this in my botched live stream yesterday. OS Windows in 32 and 64-bit. And they've had a pretty substantial speed increase, and crossing that 1.0 line was pretty a pretty big deal for them. It was a long time coming. One of the big things is that it no longer requires the X Windows system on Mac OS to run Inkscape anymore. And so that was a pretty big change there. So, and they've done some different things with the graphics engine that underlies the whole thing. A lot of features added and just streamlining of the whole UI and different things, making it a little more customizable. So that's pretty cool there. So let me switch here real quick. All right. Come back here. Everything seems to be at least going better than it did yesterday when I tried to do this. What else? Clonezilla has a new release out, 2.6.6. And that's pretty useful for cloning hard drives and different things. Even I've used it with VMs. And yeah, I've got to agree, Carlos. I think we are all aging a bit prematurely because of COVID right now. I have I've let my hair grow for about a month now without shaving, and this is like the first time in 16 years that I've been using shampoo, because normally I'm clean shaven on my head, and I don't know, a lot of times I've had a goatee, but rarely do I grow a full beard. And right now I'm just throwing caution to the wind and doing things different, or trying to. So let's see. So Clonezilla has a new version out this week. Inkscape released, I don't know, that was a week or two ago. So a week ago that 1.0 of Inkscape came out. Ventoy is on my list of things to play with. Proxmox. Thing I was going to talk about here today is I discovered something that I'm probably going to record a video on. I'm not going to do a live demo on this here because I've not installed it this way before. But let me see. Mayan EDMS. It's an electronic document management system, so think on the lines of SharePoint, only it doesn't require the licensing of Windows or SharePoint, and it's available in a container version. So I want to do a test run on that, and then I'll probably record a video hopefully this coming week on Mayan EDMS and get that released hopefully the beginning part of the week and see what happens with that. I've followed the project a little bit over the last few years. I was considering it for use for my father's business, but the guy is getting so close to retirement now that sort of canned the idea, because he's at that age where he doesn't take to learning new things that quickly, and this would just add undue stress to his life. So I'm not pushing the idea too much, but I think it's interesting for a more business-oriented solution, whereas for home, I really like Nextcloud, and there's not a feature parity there, but there are enough similar features that somebody could use Nextcloud as a poor man's document management system, so to speak. So yeah, I've got the turnkey WordPress ISO image uploaded to the Proxmox server. So I've been playing around with that. I've also been playing around with it in VirtualBox on my local machine, and using it for testing and doing some pretty major overhauling on my blog site and my business site. So I may have mentioned in a previous live stream or maybe a recorded video, by day my job is working as a technology coordinator at a library, and there's not a lot I can do for that job right now other than website updates and you know, playing middleman on some other technology things, but by and large my job is secure, but limited in what I can do at the moment. My side job or side business is called It's Fixed. I decided to do sort of a play on words there. And I do consulting for small businesses and try to keep them moving in a good direction with their technology. It's a lot of updates I'm doing for people, a lot of network stuff I'm doing for small businesses and nonprofits, and it keeps me busy. It makes me a little extra money, and it's satisfying. And then I've got the YouTube, which is it all started as a side project, hobby project, whatever you want to call it, when I was teaching IT courses, because I felt that there were a lot of things that were not in our curriculum where I was teaching that students needed to know. And so I started the YouTube channel. I think my first video went up in 2017. And that was sort of the initial idea behind the YouTube channel, is just getting information out there for students that they may not be getting exposure to in the classroom. Letting them know about the different pieces of software on Linux and BSD that are alternatives to what they might have been exposed to on Windows, free of cost. And, you know, if people really want to, they could build a business around some of these technologies and solutions to other people's problems. And there are several people that have done just that. So that is kind of a rundown on where the channel started at, and some of the things that I'm kind of working on. So let's see. We're coming in towards the hour and 15-minute mark. Did anybody have any other questions? I don't know, Carlos, you might be the only one left in the chat at this point. I think we may have lost Christopher somewhere along the line. I'll probably keep this going another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll put an image up on the screen and just keep the chat going for an additional 5 minutes after that, before I shut down the stream completely. Any questions, any particular Linux or BSD Unix related software that you'd like to see talked about or covered on the channel? I'm really open to suggestions. I don't really want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. That gets kind of monotonous. I'm sure you can guess that. I don't really want to go down the road of reviewing Windows only software. I don't think that would be true to my vision, although I've had this one particular company kind of hounding me to review their software. And I don't know, if I was going to start doing reviews of that nature, I would probably put up a second channel, make it a little more basic, and target more beginner and intermediate level people with Windows, and I'd probably cover Windows and Mac OS a little more on that type of a channel. But I don't really want to integrate that into this channel at this point in time. So I guess that's kind of my spiel at the moment. I guess I could take a couple moments to talk about something else here. That's not what I wanted to bring up. Okay, so in case you ever get their makerspace, cool place. They've got their own YouTube channel. I guess today is the day of doing shameless plugs for other YouTube channels. So might as well open that up and show that off for a minute. And they can always use more subscribers. But they're very community oriented. Uber inclusive. Anybody is welcome. Things are a little weird right now, granted, but their building was formerly a church. Currently, they're doing things for harm reduction to help current and former addicts. They're doing a lot of electronics projects. They've just recently spun up a sort of their own social media website called the Fledge Community. They've got all kinds of sensors around the building, motion sensors, air quality sensors, all kinds of things there. They've got this video here, Entering the Fledge COVID-19, that's talking about when you enter this particular door, the door sensor triggers turning on a fan, which is kind of an interesting concept. And they've just got other interesting things, a view from their porch. But yeah, the Fledge is a great place to visit. And so they've got an article on their website talking about their mission. And, Fledge in the news. We had some pretty cool events going on down at the Fledge before COVID-19 hit and kind of put the kibosh on that. But, yeah, it's a great place. And if you ever get to Michigan, please factor Lansing in and consider making this one of your destination stops. I'm not really one of those ultra high energy people that acts like a cheerleader, but I'm not opposed to giving a shameless plug once in a while for things that I believe in. All right, so I'm going to transition over to the end screen. I'm going to keep the chat up until 2:15 p.m., so about another 8 minutes or so, at which time I will shut down the live stream. And I will see everybody in a future live stream, and I hope that you take a few moments and like this and consider coming back to the channel.